Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Today, we're going to be talking about 8 things going on at the Vatican you may not know about.
That's right. When you think about the Vatican, you think about candles and incense and robes, but running the world's largest religion, there's a lot of secret things to that, and we're going to share those with you today.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Good to be here. Yeah, man, these show notes, I know some of them, but some of them are pretty interesting things I never knew about. You know,
You know, the Vatican is, by all accounts, the oldest continually operating institution in the world. It goes all the way back to the first century, but as a what I would call in the modern sense institution, let's say that it's really the successor of the Roman Empire. And the Vatican has churches and adherents all over the world. And they've been supporters of science, of politics, of technology. And what the Vatican does inside the Vatican State and throughout the world, a lot of these things might surprise you. So we're going to share some of those things with you today. Now, first, before we do, make sure you click the like and subscribe button and click the little bell. That way you get notified every time we release new content. A lot of you say, hey, I love you guys. I try to find you guys all the time, but you're not showing up in my YouTube feed. If you click the bell and click all, everything we ever release will come right to you. Then also, if you want to learn more about the pilgrimage we're going on, go to catholictalkshow.com/Greece. And we're going to be taking a cruise in the Aegean Sea. We're going to see the House of Mary, the cave where St. John received revelation, a bunch of places where St. Paul preached, and so much more. And we'll share more with you about that later. So, Ryan, I love going to the Vatican. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there just 3 times, and the last, I don't know, 12 months alone. I love the culture there. I love the architecture. I love the flow of the life there. And it seems all kind of serene and I don't know, maybe like there's not a lot going on, but just below the surface, just behind the gates, there's a lot of activities that people I don't think really understand that the Vatican actually does. And the idea for this episode came, I was reading an article about in 2020, there was a cyber war that most people don't know about. There was between China and the Vatican, right?
wow.
Right. And you think, well, the Pope just goes there, he's kissing babies and they're, breaking bread, pouring some wine and worshiping Jesus. But when you have a religion of this much consequence, political players and actors are going to be trying to counter it because it will affect their ambitions. And the Vatican knows this and has to be able to counter it. So the Vatican has what is called the I want to make sure I get this name exactly right. The Vatican Internet and Cybersecurity Office. So in 2020, there was negotiations going on between China and the Vatican because for a long time there was a dispute between the two countries. They didn't have formal relations because China wouldn't allow the Vatican to essentially install bishops, right? And the Chinese Communist government was trying to block it all. So they're going into these negotiations, and a lot of people aren't happy where these negotiations ultimately ended. But there's a compromise made where the Vatican was able to start naming bishops, placing bishops, and with the kind of assent of the Chinese government. That way, the Vatican wouldn't go in and put somebody that was too revolutionary, but then the Vatican still was able to put someone they wanted in there, as opposed to China saying, here's the official state Catholic Church in China where the communist government controlled it. So there's these big negotiations. Well, the Chinese government was hacking the Vatican servers and their email accounts to try to get intelligence during these negotiations. And the Vatican Internet and Cybersecurity Office was able to find this, counter it, shut all these down, alert the people who are negotiating. Now, the Vatican does a lot of stuff like this because there is a lot of negotiations, there's a lot of peace treaties and diplomatic relations that are going through the Vatican. And this is incredibly highly sensitive, secure, and I don't know, confidential information. And it's up to this department to make sure that they have a very tight ship, because otherwise, I mean, people are going to be using that information, whether it's the US government, the Chinese government, the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, they all spied on the Vatican during World War II and during the Cold War, because they are a neutral country that is such a player in world politics. And the fact that they've got a bunch of, I don't know, I can only presume monks sitting in front of computers, sitting there reading the screen like it's the I don't know, it looks like
Matrix.
yeah, the Matrix. And they're like, no, 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 0101, you know, and they're seeing all this stuff. I don't know. That just fascinates me, the whole concept.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, well, since John Paul II, he was very active in political leaders in countries that were in the Cold War
Absolutely.
together. He experienced some of the things in Poland from the war.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I just think that it would be almost silly for an outside country to not even try to access that information, because it would significantly change their paradigm of going into negotiations and anything that they were involved in, which as a neutral country puts you in a position to uniquely
Hmm.
negotiate. And John Paul II did very much so with Ronald Reagan, Gorbachev.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some information and spying going on there where they would, like to know what's going on between leaders.
You know, the old saying that if you're not cheating, you're not trying when it comes to sports, right? I know
Yeah.
your Houston Astros. Look, they were cheating because they wanted to win. Now,
Yeah.
well, that's not ethical, but these countries are all going to try to use nefarious means to get intelligence. And this department, like there are a couple other things they do that I think that's really interesting. So we just had a conclave that elected Pope Leo. They're the ones who are making sure, because 100% in the conclaves that elected John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, John Paul first and second, even for sure Benedict the 16th, Francis, all of those foreign governments have tried to tap into those conclaves to get information and hopefully try to influence who the next pope was. And it's up to the Vatican's counter cybersecurity team and counter cyber threat team to make sure that they're jamming signals, they're sweeping for bugs, they're putting essentially, I think it's almost like a Faraday net that they put around the Sistine Chapel, so that no frequencies can get in and out, and really try to bring the technology back to the 13th century. So when people say the Catholic Church wants to hold back technology, this is one instance where I'd agree with them, because they wanted to get it as secure as possible. So that's another thing they do.
Mm.
uh I guess the third thing that we'll cover on this that they do is they the cybersecurity team also monitors, well, this is a new thing that they're having to do, is deep fakes, AI, things that are like, okay, the Pope said this, and there's maybe out on the message boards where they're attributing false claims to the Pope or to whatever. They're out there monitoring all this activity on the internet, and they're being able to counter it with the truth. They're able to find like maybe a video of the Pope doing something and identify that this has been digitally altered, or photographs. So that all falls with under the purview of this department. Which, again, I would love to meet these guys. I know Thad from our team would love to nerd out with these guys. So if anyone from that department's ever listening, next time in Rome, we'll buy you a couple bottles of wine and tell us what that's all about, because that just sounds fun and super interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's with the technology evolving as quick as it is, it's monitoring deep fakes, fake stuff when they first started coming out was difficult, but now I think there's lots of programs that do that. I was just thinking like
Hot dog
communication.
or not hot dog, right?
Yeah. Twitter bought that. No,
Yeah.
yeah, it just seems like they would have to have some sort of, a very intelligent group of people, doing this that can assess different communications and different types of software platforms to use. I was just thinking the biggest thing is communication. Like if you can tap into the email systems and all that and grab all that, man,
Mhm.
especially with AI now, you can get really far really quick in analyzing it, you know?
They sure can. So, talking about really smart people working at and for the Vatican, I think this is a good one. Is that the Vatican operates its own astronomical services and a observatory, and it's one of the more powerful space telescopes. Not, I'm sorry, no, land-based telescopes in the world, and they have done a lot to study cosmology, astronomy, the movement of the stars, observing the natural features of different bodies in space. I know that there's a significant portion of the craters on the moon are named after Jesuits because they've been doing this so long, space observation. A lot of people think, oh, the church was very anti-telescope and they took Galileo and they executed him, which is couldn't be further than the truth. They gave Galileo a censure from basically teaching in colleges because he was wrong and making false inferences. Um, and they gave him a nice villa, and his daughter became a nun. So they didn't execute him. That whole thing is another episode. But
Yeah.
they have a observatory in Arizona to get rid, because you don't want an observatory in a big city like Rome because all the light pollution makes it hard to see. But they also, if you've seen the news, the Pope is up at Castel Gandolfo right now, which is the Pope's summer residence. Like that's his beach house. That's his Georgia, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
And they've operated a telescope out of there for a long time with the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the Vatican Observatory. Um, they publish things in astrophysics journals. Um, they study, they're helping to study dark matter, which is one of the biggest confounding things in cosmology, in physics, is understanding what dark matter is, which is estimated to really be most of the mass of the universe, although it's never been observed. So they're really helping that. Um, Star formation, planetary movements. But then also, what's cool about this is they're as skilled scientifically as any observatory in the world, but then they also talk about the theology and the impact of extraterrestrial life, of what life, if it's only on Earth, what that means. Um, uh, it's one of, if not the world's oldest continuing astronomical services. And again, you think that the Vatican is anti-science, but this is a case where it's like they've been on the forefront of this since the very beginning of the field. And I would love, there's a guy, I think his name is oh, Brother Guy, and it's a Italian name. It sounds like one of your relatives, Ryan, like Guy Consolmagno, right? He's got these awesome pointy eyebrows. He looks like Gandalf. And this dude has ran that institution for a long time, and one of the smartest guys in the world. And he's a priest and an astronomer. And people don't think the Vatican does that, but they do.
Yeah, and it's they have one in Arizona, I think, too.
That's right.
That's widely recognized as one of the top land-based telescopes as well. The Jesuits have been managing this for centuries. I think they still do manage the effort there. And we, just fun fact: the Catholic Church was the first one to ever say they would baptize an alien if they ever met one. So that gives you a little idea. They're on top.
Well,
of
see,
it.
it'll be interesting that if there is ever extraterrestrial life, which I don't believe in, and we did a whole episode on that, but if there is, I think our response as a faith and as a planet might be formed by which religious order gets to them first. Because if the Jesuits get to them, they're going to be like, "Any of you guys play basketball? You guys want to go to like Marquette or something, right?" And if it's like the Dominicans, they're like, "Hey, let's sit down and talk about what it's like out there and the light and the dark out there." Or if it's the
Yeah.
Franciscan, they're like, "What kind of plants you got out there? You got anything? You got any nice herbs or anything like that? Anything you want to baptize?" So I think the approach can be different. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff. If I'm ever out in Arizona, I might try to swing by that place and just see what that's like. Maybe you could put on some Pink Floyd and do like a light show.
They probably have those there too. It's Arizona.
They do. There's actually at the observatory here by me, they do a Pink Floyd light show, which I've been meaning to go to just because it's cool.
Yeah.
It probably won't be as cool as it would have been when I was, I don't know, 17, right? But it'll still be pretty cool. Um, Here's another one. So the Vatican, right? Like the president, he's always got the guys in black around him with the glasses and the little things. They have the Secret Service here in the United States. The Vatican has a similar agency that protects the Pope, protects foreign dignitaries, uh, is in charge of counterterrorism. Because look, there's a lot of bad actors out there who want to attack the Vatican. And the Vatican, if you've ever been there, you think this is crazy. Anyone can just walk into anywhere here, right? Just walk into the church. There's no border. I mean, if there's a border, it's just some guy standing there, probably smoking a schmag, sitting by his car. No one cares. You can walk around freely. And that sense of security is ensured by the Vatican Gendarmerie Corps, right? They are essentially the Vatican's secret service. So they're the ones who, when the Pope is going to another country, they work with, say, the Secret Service in the United States to plan the safety, plan the security of the trip. They also perform counterterrorism. A few years back, there was a plot to drive a car through St. Peter's and run people over. You see a lot of that in Europe as terrorism, where they use cars as weapons. They also handle investigations of high level crimes. This is different than the Swiss Guard, right? They're not the same organization. The Swiss Guard is, I would say, more of a military and police branch, right? So the Swiss Guard is going to be, pickpockets or fights or
They're the
you know,
muscle. Yeah.
they're the muscle. Yeah, the Swiss Guard's the muscle. And if you ever met a Swiss Guard, dude, they're big guys too, right? You don't want to mess with them. They'll beat you down. Now, this part, though, this is the one that's a little bit more cloak and dagger. Some of the things that they do, I mean, they have, you see all the windows around St. Peter's. And if you think there isn't somebody in there watching, you would be wrong. I mean, they're monitoring the square at all time. They have facial recognition. They can look down and they can scan faces. They can say, okay, this person is on a watch list, and we can scan their face and they'll know about it. Just like they would if the president of the United States was going somewhere and they can scan the crowd, they can do the same thing. They're basically the Vatican's NSA. It's a
Mhm.
pretty cool thing. And being an independent sovereign nation, they have to have this, right? But then also having someone, I mean, we've seen John Paul II. There was an attempted assassination on him. Yeah, I remember when Benedict XVI was doing midnight Christmas Eve mass, he was attacked. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and the crazy part is there's so many plots we've never heard about because they take them out from inception. I mean, this is no joke. They are a serious intelligence operations team.
Yeah, and I would imagine they'd have significant connections to like diplomatic channels to
Absolutely.
assist them in their needs, because their needs are different than like a country like France or, Spain or whatever, because they're obviously a lot larger,
Hmm.
and they have different challenges. But when you said facial recognition, I kept thinking like just the amount of people that go there that are not citizens is
Right.
massive. So they would need a dragnet or something that they could, be alerted to.
Dude, a
That's pretty cool.
dragnet.
Yeah.
That's a great word, Ryan. That's a great word that I haven't heard in a long time, dude. And I wouldn't have that's cool that you just dropped that word. I like that.
Yeah. They need
But
a
I mean,
dragnet.
I think the Vatican has what, 2,000 or so citizens, and they have millions of visitors a year. I
Yeah.
mean, the Vatican's pretty serious organization, and you're right about how they have to deal with foreign nations and the security arms of these nations. I mean, they have the presidents or premiers or prime ministers of 180 different countries throughout the world coming there. I mean, there's not a day or week goes by where it's like, oh, the president of France is there, the vice president of the United States, the prime minister of Uganda, the premier of Laos. It doesn't matter. There's always something going on, and they're the ones mitigating threats, discovering plots, counteracting terrorism. Because look, man, we've been so blessed that there's never been a significant terrorist attack at the Vatican. And it's because of the work of these men and women who protect that safety and keep it as a place of peace, a place where people can feel secure and focus on worship instead of thinking of it as try to walk into the White House. It's not going to happen. Try to walk into the House of Commons in England. It's not going to, you can't just walk in, but you or I can get on a plane, walk up to the Vatican, get a cup of coffee, just walk in, right? And that sense of freedom and security comes from the work of these men and women. So I really do appreciate that. And the church um, globally, I think, is indebted to that service that they provide as well.
Yeah, there's some real talent there. Yeah, another
Yep.
thing too is the Vatican, it doesn't have a lot of citizens, but it's got a lot of people coming there from all over the world. So it's probably a different setup than most countries, but since most of the citizens work there, or they're on temporary visas or however they do, but they don't have immigration or anything like that there. It's just like if you're a citizen there, it's like, hey, there's certain criteria that you meet to become a citizen. We'll just go ahead and make you one. So
Hmm.
it's an interesting population demographic, if you will.
Right. I've been talking about this for years. I'm going to say it again. Pope Leo, if you're listening, and I'm sure you are, because I know you don't have a lot to do right now being a new pope, and you're spending your time trying to learn the office by listening to the Catholic Talk Show. I'm sure that's happening. So since you're listening, Pope Leo, again, I think you offer dual citizenship for every Catholic in the world. They can be a citizen of the country that they're in, and then also a citizen of Vatican City. Give them an honorific tax of $1 per year, or whatever is appropriate, and now you have the largest country in the world, and that's a flex. And there's a lot of other reasons that we've talked about before. So that
There
would be
is a
cool too.
flex in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we're the smallest country in the world, and we have the largest population of citizens. I mean, I think the density. I mean, if you're saying there's a billion Catholics worldwide, and the Vatican is a couple square kilometers. I mean, the population density is absolutely astronomical. I mean, blow Hong Kong or Mexico City out of the water. So I just it's been a while since the church flexed its kind of three-tiered tiara muscles, and I think this is the move right there.
That's cool.
So another thing is the Vatican. So we talked about kind of equivalence between um, the Secret Service or the police with the Swiss Guard. We talked about scientific endeavors like the Vatican Observatory. They also have a spy network, right? And this is different than just that internal one. This is the international organization. Now, it's not a spy network like, let's say, like maybe the CIA might operate, but it's not too far away, right? Um, where the CIA might have maybe more national security interests and might be a little bit more involved in I don't know, regime changes or counterterrorism. The Vatican has the Holy See Diplomatic Corps, and this is the oldest diplomatic service in the world. It goes all the way back to the 3rd century with the legalization of Christianity. It's built off the diplomatic services that were around since the time of the Roman Empire. They have nunciatures in 180 countries, so they maintain formal state relations. Um, and this is basically like the I don't know, the foreign service or the Department of State for the Vatican. And this is one of the most important things that they do on a global stage, is that this is how they are able to set up a meeting, you know, behind sidelines, whether it's with Castro when he was in Cuba, or between Putin and the leaders of Ukraine, uh, setting up meetings for peace talks with Palestine and Israel, um, setting peace talks between Pakistan and India. Right, this is the way that they get that kind of stuff done, and this is from the Holy See Diplomatic Corps, and this is, I think, one of the coolest things they do. And this also, because again, they have relations with every country. They're not nefarious, but it essentially works like a spy network where they're able to gather intelligence. And during World War II, the intelligence they were able to gather was absolutely critical for the Allies. Um, because look, you got a priest on every corner, you got a bishop in every big city, you got rank and file Catholics everywhere you turn. And all of that data working for the good of humanity is how they're able to use diplomatic service and their reach, to provide some good in the world. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, they're in a unique position too, because diplomatically speaking, the Vatican's not interested in a lot of things that other countries are interested in.
The Vatican's not trying to steal anyone's oil,
Right.
right?
They're not limited by economies or ideologies. They're probably in most cases seen as a passive diplomat.
Hmm.
So there's some there's some unique benefits there. I would say too, also that this, hearing that it started in the third century, the Edict of Milan was the document that the church diplomatically got Constantine to write to legalize Christianity, which began
Mhm.
a whole nother stack of problems, because then we get into the Arian heresy and all these other things where I think at the council there was 9 out of 120 bishops that were actually orthodox against the Arian heresy. A lot of them were imprisoned. Some of them died. A lot of them were
Athanasius
exiled.
contra mundum. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of them were exiled. So you look at the need. There's probably always been a diplomatic effort. I think with the legalization in 325 at the Council of Nicaea, the need formalized even more because of all the things that were brought into that council from all these different areas, where the navigation of it probably wasn't there to begin with as much as it needed to be, but the lessons were all there. It's kind
Yeah.
of like dating the wrong girl for the first time, and she's really bad, and you get all the lessons in one go,
You-
or vice versa. We're guys.
Ryan, who hurt you, man? That sounded personal. So, no, you're right about that. And I think one of the misconceptions is that the church back in those days was indistinguishable from the government, whether it's, the Roman Empire or whatever. But when you look at a lot of these heresies, most of the time what was happening is you get an emperor in there who was an iconoclast or was a Arian, and then they would put in a bishop of Constantinople who was for that. And then the church everywhere else in the world is like, whoa, 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 we need a council over this, right? And then you can see these appeals to the Bishop of Rome in these councils, even though the Bishop of Rome wouldn't condescend and go there. He's like, I'm not showing up for this. Here's my letter. Peter has spoken, right? So this is one of the great arguments for papal supremacy, um, being the first among equals and also being the prince of the apostles and having that supremacy. But there's other things that they do as well. So, we talk about like a spy network with them, but that sounds maybe a little bit negative. They're also on the ground finding areas of persecution, right? A lot of these times when you hear like, hey, look, there's a very small tribe in Africa that's being persecuted for their religion. um a lot of governments aren't hearing about that aspect of things. That's also what the Vatican is able to report on, gather information. They would then give it to the Vatican Secretary of State, who would then be able to give that to nations who could put pressures on the leader of the country where those things are happening, right? So they're able to protect the religious freedom of people throughout the world by creating these reports, generating this intelligence, and giving it around, right? So, and this happens all the time. This is one of the core things that they do is protecting the physical and spiritual health of obscure areas in the world where no one else would care about, right? Do you think the United States government cares that 20 people got killed in a religious fight in the jungles of Africa? They don't care. They're like, where's the oil? Where's the money? Where's the power? But the Vatican does, and they're able to put diplomatic pressure then on these countries to say this is a moral outrage. And that's one of the very important things that they do as well.
Yeah. The other thing, I don't know if it falls in that, but there's diplomatic missions. They're in 106 residential apostolic nunciatures.
Nucleatures, yeah.
Nunciatures. So there is a duality there, I think, with somebody that's there for politics and relations, but also in picking bishops and understanding that. I think we had Bishop Toops on
Yep.
our show, and he was like, he got a call from the nunciature, the nun.
That's basically the Vatican ambassador. We can't just say ambassador because we're too fancy, right? So we got to say the
We got to
nucleature,
use
right?
Latin.
Yeah, we got to use Latin, right?
So
Although ambassador has Latin
they do
roots.
have other responsibilities, I think, for
Sure.
communicating to the Vatican. It's literally the interest of the church, the body of Christ, I think,
Mhm.
sums it all up, in terms of what the scope is.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty cool that you brought that up about bishops, right? This is another thing that this organization does is it gathers information about the spiritual health and needs of an area as well. Because look, the Pope's sitting there in Rome, he does not He's not going to have intimate knowledge of the spiritual needs of the people of Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, right? You need to have these people there who are saying, look, this is what people need. This is their lived experience. This is the political environment. This is the kind of bishop who is going to be able to lead these people, be able to work with the local and national government of the areas they're from. Here's the moral and spiritual crises of this area, right? Whether it's drug networks,
Yeah.
whether it's uh, radical political ideologies. I mean, look, if you look in the 70s and 80s of the church's work in Central and South America, look, man, that was a rough time with all the coups and all the drug networks and all the political instability and a lot of the Marxist and socialist governments trying to take place there, and then all the counter and it was a very messy time. And the Vatican um, diplomatic service was instrumental in, as much as you can see, keeping peace and protecting the rights and the health of Catholics there. Now that got real messy, and we've seen a lot of martyrdoms during that. But you know, the Vatican being able to directly say, "Look, United States, this is what's going on in your backyard that you might not be aware of. Priests are disappearing. People are, getting disappeared," was the way they would say it. And the Vatican being able to gather intelligence and give this to, I guess, the countries who would have either the moral or regional responsibility to participate, very important. And we see that all over the place. Another cool thing that they did was, look, during World War II, the Vatican spy service was maybe at the peak of their game, man. I mean, they were all over. They were providing intelligence for the Allies on not troop movements, because I don't think they would want to provide things that would directly lead to even combatant deaths. That's not something that they're going to do, saying, hey, look, your mark's right here. This battalion's moved there, drop bombs there. Vatican wouldn't do that. But they would be able to tell you things like, I don't know, maybe these people in the Nazi government are not so high on Hitler. Maybe if they were given a little bit of backing, wink, wink, they might try to assassinate Hitler. The Vatican was actively working under Leo the, I'm sorry, not Leo, Pius the 12th, frankly, to assassinate Hitler. And there's a great book. It's called Church of Spies. It covers this whole thing. The Nazis were trying to assassinate the Pope, and the Pope was trying to assassinate Hitler. And it's one of the most fascinating things you'll ever read if you're into history or religion or just World War II. Check that out. It's called Book of Spies. Very, very cool book. And you don't really a lot of times think of like the Vatican trying to kill a world leader, but in that instance, that was going on. And I think that's incredibly fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people trying to assassinate him. I mean, even from within. So for them to be on that camp to just stop what he was doing makes a lot of sense, you know?
Yeah. And then there was priests running secret underground railroads to secure passage for persecuted Jewish
Yeah.
and Gypsy and Romani and all sorts of groups that were being targeted. They were creating fake passports, creating fake birth documents. The Vatican was even creating fake baptismal documents for Jewish people so that they could present and say, look,
And
I've
Catholic.
been baptized. I'm a Catholic. I'm not Jewish, which would get them off the hook. And you may think that that's, I don't know, maybe disingenuous, but I think that saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. I mean, they would create false identities, um, crazy stuff. There's a movie, it's called The Scarlet and the Black with Gregory Peck, um, all about this. John Paul II during the Cold War. Look, I mean, MI6, CIA, and the workers' movement in Poland, they all credit John Paul II with one of the most instrumental people in helping bring down the Eastern Bloc and the communist East Europe. I mean, that was one of the most important political and I don't know, I don't want to say spy, but diplomatic services the world's ever seen, and it's shaped the way our world is today. So that's again, the KGB said John Paul II and the Vatican were one of the most destabilizing forces in their control and their oppression of people under their communist thumb. So again, super cool stuff. All right.
Mhm.
Um, so now let's get out of it. So we've talked about some heavy stuff. Let's talk about some more fun stuff because it's not all Vatican sending assassins and ninjas and secret spyware and face recognition and Swiss guards just mauling people and counterterrorism. They do some nice stuff too, right? One of my favorites is that the Vatican has their own post office, their own numismatic office. So they're creating and their own post service. And I love when I go to the Vatican, I love going there. It's super fun. You can get, the stamps they have. They issue their own euros because they're a sovereign nation. Their mail service is great. Like anytime I've ever went to the Vatican, I send a postcard home stamped from the Vatican because again, they're their own country. They have to have these services to provide communications. And it's also a not insignificant revenue generator for the operations of the state. This doesn't go to the operations of the church as a religion, but it goes to the operations of the state because you got to have employees. Having these types of things that people are interested in is a really a great way to provide something that's enjoyable, core services, and then generate revenue to continue the operation of the Vatican of the Holy See.
Yeah, I was just looking at their tax structures. They have an import tax, VAT tax, which is pretty standard in
Mhm.
nations. And that would be considered like a sales tax. So, they don't tax people on real estate or income or any of these things that
Well, who owns real estate in the Vatican?
right. It's just the
I,
Vatican. Yeah. I'm sure there's some
yeah.
apartments and stuff, but not owning stuff there is probably very small, if
I don't
anything.
know the answer to that, but if it's available, dude, I'm down for that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more people that work at the Vatican than live there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's every day they come in and out.
Yeah.
Um, one of the funny things I heard is that like if you're in Rome and you really need to make sure a physical letter gets there, you go over to the Vatican postal service instead of the Roman or the Italian postal service because they're more reliable and they'll get there quicker. Which I think that's funny.
Yeah. Makes sense.
They also have, and this is pretty cool, they have their own apothecary. They have their own I don't know, pharmacy, right? And their pharmacy has been one of the oldest continuing pharmacy service and structures in the world. And it's pretty interesting is that their pharmacy can a lot of times get drugs that are necessary that you can't get other places, right? And it's not because they have a lack of oversight, but there's such a niche pharmacy. So a lot of people really depend on that. And when you're looking at something like the Vatican, when you frankly, you've got a lot of old men and they need their medicine. This is another thing they operate that if you don't have the medicine coming in, a lot of these old men with high blood pressure or achy joints or arthritis or whatever, it's going to be hard to get. And to make sure that they can maintain their independence and their sovereignty, this was something that um, they just said, look, we have to have this because if we don't have this, we're going to have to rely on Italy around us, and we can't have that because then we can be beholden to them for our very physical health.
Yeah. That makes sense too. I mean, it does operate more and more like a country when you're looking at this
Well,
particular.
I mean, it is a country.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vatican has hospitals, right? I know they have the Jesu, a lot of it's a
Mhm.
very good children's hospital. Um, they have ambulance services, they have emergency care. Look, I mean, almost every time I have ever been there, you'll see somebody have a little bit of a medical emergency, whether it's people overheating or having some medical emergency. Someone needs to respond to that there, and they have all of that as well. The Vatican pharmacy also does some cool stuff where they're mixing up, some Saint Hildegard stuff. They have their own line of perfumes, they have elixirs, they have soaps, they have a lot of I don't know, what would you call it? Not alternative, but like holistic healthcare stuff. Pretty cool that you can only get there, and it's all proprietary to the Vatican pharmacy. Last time I was there, I brought my wife and daughter back some perfumes and scented oils and stuff. Pretty cool stuff that if like the United States doesn't have an official perfume, but the Vatican does. So what's up, right?
Official perfume.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the last couple ones, I do want to take a second, right? Here's a great service that I can definitely recommend that, if the Vatican has the funds, they should, buy into, right? And if they don't have the funds, they can get it for free. And that's Hallow. Hallow is the world's number one Catholic prayer app. They've got so many things going on. They have so many different services. The Vatican said that's a lot of services, just like us, right? They have daily prayers, they have rosaries, they have music, they have meditation guides. They have different podcasts. They have the Bible in the Year. They're doing something right now with Jonathan Rumi, where he's leading people for the next 30 days through a Bible study. People love themselves some Jonathan Rumi, and he's doing a 30-day Bible challenge. So if you want to take part of that right now, go to catholictalkshow.com/hollow. You can download the app for free. You can get a free trial. You can go through this thing with Jonathan Rumi, and they always have these different prayer challenges or these different Bible challenges. I love the daily rosary on there, the examines, night prayer. I love the chant and the music. Ryan, I know you use it with your kids, right?
Yeah, big shout out to Margie too. This is one of our talk show pilgrimages on WhatsApp.
Yep.
She just put a 30-day challenge out for everybody, and I just signed up right before the show.
Look at that. You
But yeah,
actually use it. We're not just getting paid to show it.
yeah, and I used it last night with my kids. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure they love that time with their dad, to pray together, and that app. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people miss about Hallow. A lot of times they think, oh, it's like, I lock into my headphones and I pray. But I mean, it's a great thing to bring families and friends and communities and prayer groups together. They have prayer groups. They have a lot of great stuff for kids on there. And a lot of times it can be hard to teach your kid how to pray, right? A lot of times it could be, okay, say your guardian angel prayer and go to bed. But to really get them to engage in prayer as a family is one of the most powerful things, and Hallow does that. So again, go to catholictalkshow.com/Hallow, download the app for free, join in this Jonathan Rumi 30-day challenge, and see all the other different things that Hallow has, and see if it isn't something that could really make a big impact on your spiritual life. Now, Ryan, another big spiritual impact on your life is pilgrimage, and we are going to Greece and Turkey on a pilgrimage. And this is a very limited uh, availability pilgrimage. Only 50 people are going to go, and those spaces have already filled up really fast. We're taking a cruise from Athens to Turkey. We're going to spend essentially 10 days in Greece and Turkey on a pilgrimage in the footsteps of Our Lady, St. John, and St. Paul. We're going to be able to go to Athens and see the Acropolis and all the areas that St. Paul preached. We're going to go to the island where St. John was banished, where he received the book of Revelations, and see the actual cave where he received this vision from God. We're going to go to Ephesus and see the house where Our Lady and St. John lived after the crucifixion and resurrection and ascension, where she lived out the rest of her life. A beautiful place of prayer, to connect with Our Lady. We're going to go to places like Corinth, where St. Paul lived for years and wrote the Bible. I mean, this is the place where St. Paul wrote the Bible. We're going to go to some of the most beautiful Greek islands like Santorini and Isle of Rhodes with all their history and natural beauty. Definitely something you want to take part in. This is going to be September 26th to October 5th. You can go to catholictalkshow.com/Greece. We're all going to be on a cruise together. We're going to get to pray together, play together, see all these amazing sights, and experience in this Jubilee year an amazing pilgrimage together, Ryan. I'm super excited for this one.
Yeah, and it's our first cruise too, so, just having that different dynamic of being in the water, having
Yep.
views, at all times that we can hang out, looking at the mountains out there, chatting it
Yep.
up. I'm excited. It's been a couple of years since I've been on a pilgrimage with the talk show. It's definitely needed
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You weren't able to go on the last one after the really, big changes you went through.
Yep.
So you'll be there. Um, we've got Father Golis going with us. Father Golis is a bi-ritual priest. So he's understands both the Eastern liturgies and the Western liturgies. So we're going to be able to really learn more about that spiritual patrimony of the East. And then, like you said, being on a cruise ship, if you've been on a pilgrimage with us before, we'd love to have you back. But there's a lot of time on buses, there's a lot of time in hotels. We're all going to be staying on the same ship together. So we're going to be on deck having prayer sessions, having time to sit and talk as a group. And I think we're going to make some great friends. So go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Greece. It's with our travel partner, Select International, who does a wonderful job. Top tier food, top tier accommodations. Very limited. Sign up for it because this is going to be sold out any day now. So if you want to go with us, go ahead and sign up now. And then finally, last thing, if you want to support us, we don't have perfumes to sell. We don't have a post office. We don't have a spy network. We can barely keep our microphones and our lights on. And if you want to help us, you go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon, and you can find a giving tier to help support the things that Ryan and I do at the Catholic Talk Show to help us continue this program going and reaching millions of people a year. We have a lot of great, easy tiers to support. It's as little as $5. And we have great gifts to give you in return: sacramentals, hats, coffee cups, hoodies, and all sorts of things in our gratitude. We appreciate all of your prayers and all your support, and your financial support allows us to continue making this show. We couldn't do it without you. So please consider in your generosity to support us and help us continue to make this. So here's one last thing I want to talk about that the Vatican does, and this is a really practical one, is that the Vatican has it's the Vatican Workshop and Technical Services, the Fabbrica di San Pietro. You can't just go into Lowe's or Home Depot and pull a new block off the shelf there to repair the Vatican or some of these churches. This is all craftsmanship and artisanry that is thousands of years old. You can't just say, well, oh boy, I don't know, the gold leaf around this Michelangelo painting's a little chippy. Go down to Lowe's or to, grab some new paint. You have to have trained master artisans to maintain what is a cultural heritage and a spiritual heritage unlike any other in the world. So, I mean, you have people in there who are uh, engineers, seismic engineers. You have people in there who specialize in marble, bronze, gold leaf, painting restoration. Their maintenance crews. Like we just saw, the Vatican underwent a massive renovation and cleaning of the Bernini Baldacchino. Look, these are some of the most important artistic works in world history, and the Vatican maintains specialists to make sure that all this stuff continues to last for future generations to be able to use it to ponder the Blessed Trinity. And you could take that for granted, but I mean, you've ever seen a church that had a bad pastor? I mean, that thing will decay within 10 years. I mean, you have cracks in the ceiling, and the church will look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town in no time. And the Vatican's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And the current St. Peter's been around for hundreds of years, and it looks beautiful and stunning because of the work of these men and women. And that's, I think, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's art, right? I mean, if you look at it, it's there's obviously materials involved, but you're preserving something that is meant to glorify God and is ancient, and has that heritage. I think about these repositories of materials that they must have. But the other thing too is, like, I went to Augusta to go to the Masters. It was
Hmm.
like a women's tournament, and like the
You
place
bought me
is,
a hat from there. I still have it.
yeah, and the place is very. I mean, from a ergonomic standpoint, it's pretty. It's pretty, and so if a tree falls or something is happens to the course or what they've put together there, they've got a farm that's adjacent to it that has different size pine trees, everything. They're able to switch things out to keep that. So it kind of made me think, as you were describing that, it's like, you don't just plant a tree at Augusta. You don't just
Right.
slap some drywall on a painting and call it a day and just say, hey, you know what? Michelangelo's paintings, it's had its time, and let's just go ahead and let it go, and we'll just slap something over the top of it. Like, that just
Yes.
doesn't make any sense.
Put some spackle on that fresco. It's starting to chip. You can't
Yeah,
do that, right?
yeah.
And I like that. I like the concept of having those materials. I mean, just look at St. Peter's Square. You see the cobblestones, right? One of those things goes missing or broken. I got to imagine they've got like the Pope's got a little tool shed out behind the Vatican where he's got all of his tools and his repair supplies and stuff like that. Um,
Well, the other thing
they
too is they probably, in centuries of working on it have probably dug up many things that,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
they're like, hey, here's a cobblestone. Let's put this in our repository of cobblestone so we don't have to make them brand new. Let's keep some of these things that, you know, and it's the same thing everywhere you go in Rome. It's like the Parthenon has now become a church, and or, you know, it used to be a church, one or the
Yep.
other.
Yeah,
The
it was a church.
the economy of materials that end up at the Vatican that were somewhere else. You know, the story of Nero's bronze statue, and somehow it got through the Parthenon into the Vatican. So you have this economy of just building materials there that, yeah, there's probably a reserve of all that, you know, somewhere, you know.
So the Vatican Museums, I'll lump this in. That's another one. This is a bonus. Like the Vatican Museums is one of the most, if not the most impressive museum in the world for
Mhm.
antiquities.
Mhm.
I mean, you go in there, it is overwhelming. I mean, if you just go in the hall of the busts, of the marble busts,
Right.
I mean, it's like a football field full of every era, every history of throughout the world. It's all there. I mean, they have archaeological services because they participate in archaeological digs. They have art restoration for all the amazing pieces of art they have in the museum. And then, and look, if you're ever there, definitely check out the museum. But what you said about kind of having reserves, I was lucky enough. Thad and I, we went there to the Vatican. We got to go behind the gates, and being Thad and I, we snuck off and we're walking around, and we found ourselves in the Pope's personal private gardens, back behind the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. And we're walking around there, and me and Thad are, you know, having some coffee, smoking a cigarette in the Vatican's the Pope's private garden. And you know, like, you know, you go into your own house and in the backyard, you got like a planter, this plastic, it's got some dead flowers in it. They've got just like here's a huge statue, and it's just the broken head of Trajan, and it's just sitting there, right?
Mhm.
So they have a lot of cool stuff too that's not even on display, that's just kind of in situ, that's just still there from antiquity. So definitely one of the coolest things that they do, that they are able to maintain this cultural history. Now,
Yeah.
the last one I want to cover is the Vatican Secret Archives. And this is the one that a lot of people get bent out of shape about. They think the Vatican Secret Archives is where all their spy information, the Vatican computer that keeps all the Protestant records, is there. That's not what the Vatican Secret Archives is. The Vatican Secret Archives is really, secret goes to the same root word as secretary, right? It's basically the secretary. It's where they keep all of their communications and documents. And Pope Benedict the 16th, he wanted to retire and become the curator of that. But they have all the documents throughout all the history of the church. They have letters from Genghis Khan. They have letters from Roman emperors. They have letters from Abraham Lincoln saying, "What side are you guys on in the Civil War?" They have letters from Jefferson Davis. They have treaties from Charlemagne. They have papal dispatches from Marco Polo's explorations. They have, I would call this the library of the history of the Vatican. That's a good way to think of the secret archives. It's not a secret database of damning information or conspiracies. You know, there's not aliens and Jesus's love children living under there like the books would have you tell, or have you believe. It is basically, if you think of like the United States, how they have the National Archives, right, where they have all the histories. They have copies of the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and they have, you know, all the communications. That's what the secret archives is essentially the National Archives of the Vatican. And if you're a trained scholar, you can go in there and you can request documents. A lot of them have been digitized. And I only imagine now with AI, one of the next steps is going to be a real codification of that and making it so available to scholars to be able to go in there, because there's documents that haven't been read in 800 years that would really grow people's understanding of history. And that's something that I'd love to be able to dig into. You know, that would be super cool.
Yeah, just kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation, how the church is involved in so many different, well, back then, kingdoms,
Hmm.
you know, political structures, diplomatic structures. You know, a lot of these things were given to them, right? I mean, it
Oh,
wasn't like they were seeking them. And then a lot like monks and 900 years were writing scripture. They were copying scripture because there was no printing press. The church has always had a desire to keep and maintain, preserve all of what history has to offer. I think about in the French Revolution, the burning of Catholic libraries
Mm.
and monks.
Napoleon raided the secret archives, and
Yeah.
they took so many papers, they were using it for paper mache. They were taking their meals and their fish and wrapping it in like documents from the 4th century. Napoleon was kind of a jerk for that, dude.
Yeah,
Not
so
cool.
it is a
Not cool,
target.
Napoleon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's the preservation of Western society, and by and large, obviously there's some Eastern documents there, but it is fascinating. It's also the fact that when you're dealing with people there, you're dealing with people with PhD knowledge about either the preservation, the archaeology, the history. Like, you're dealing with people that are very mindful of what's going on there, and the history that it supports.
A lot of times you hear the term dark ages, and a lot of people think that they mean dark ages. Well, everyone was just sad sitting around eating mud waiting to die, right? Now, number one, dark ages, that's a misnomer. They weren't dark. I mean, they were creating things like, the most beautiful Gothic architecture in the world and science and everything like that. So that's a misnomer created during the Protestant
Mhm.
Revolution. But one of the real reasons they called it the Dark Ages is because there was, after the sack of Rome by the Vandals, after the fall of the Western Empire, all the documentation was missing, right? I mean, there's great records in between the, let's just say, after the first sack of Rome in like 300 BC, all the way up until about 400. Great documentation. That's why we know so much about Roman history. But then after Rome fell, all that documentation got destroyed. So they're saying, look, this is dark. We don't have history to illuminate this. We don't have documents to illuminate. So that's where the term dark ages really kind of comes from. And if the Vatican hadn't preserved all of these historical documentation, there would be no real knowledge of what happened for 1,000 years. And that's what the archives are. They're an archive of the documentation of Christianity and Western culture in a time where no other political entity was able to have the kind of network, resources, or foresight to preserve all this.
Yeah.
The Secret Archives has 53 miles of shelf space of documents going back over 1,000 years old. One of the like they have things I saw. They have Henry VIII's request for an annulment, which was denied, right? Which caused the Protestant Revolution. There was a really cool, the one I thought was super cool is the Pope's letter to Genghis Khan. They're like, who's this dude taking over the world? We got to send someone out there. And they send this priest to go across the whole Silk Road and like, here's a document, read this, right? And they have that. And we mentioned Galileo earlier. How do we know what really happened there? Well, we have the whole transcript from his canonical trial there and so many other ones. So that's, Vatican Secret Archives, not some crazy conspiracy theory place. It is the National Archives of the Holy See in Western society. So this is
And
it's a fun episode.
yeah, and another thing to say is it's secret in a sense where you have to be special to get in there if you're doing research, but there is a front-facing
Yeah.
museum that's fascinating.
I'm glad you said that. Let's clarify that. It doesn't mean secret, like, shh, this is a secret. Don't tell anyone. I think a better translation from the original Latin or Italian would be the private archives, right? Or the personal archives. Not like the secret. Like, again, we say back secretary, like my secretary keeps my documents. This is the personal archives, would be, in the modern parlance, a better way to understand what it is. By calling it the secret archives, they're just getting internet trolls ammunition. It's the national archives of the Vatican.
Yeah.
It's not some big conspiracy theory. So
They just don't
a
want a
lot
lot
of
of people in there fumbling around with stuff.
well, no, you don't just go into like the local library and take out
Right.
Galileo's trial and then not return it.
It has to be used for a purpose of preserving history and the archives themselves, putting them to use in the modern world with writers, PhD students, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple books that are, I don't know, 200 years old. Those things, if you look at them wrong, they fall apart.
Yeah.
So can you imagine it's like vellum or something like that from 900 years ago? You can't just go thumbing through that stuff like,
Right.
you're looking at a magazine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's some of the crazy stuff the Vatican does that probably didn't realize or would never consider that the Vatican needs to do. And I hope this helps understand the depth of the involvement of the Vatican in the world, how it supports so many people in so many different ways, provides security, scientific advancement, political stability, diplomatic services, healthcare services, cultural preservation, historical study. I mean, there's so much that the Vatican does as a political entity in addition to what it does as the bride of Christ, as the spiritual center of humanity, as the mother church of the world. So I think this is, good for people to hear about instead of, I mean, we could talk about politics or bad news, but I think this is more fun, Ryan.
Yeah. It's instrumentality is something that, you cannot understand in a lifetime of research, right?
Another great
Uh,
word, man. Instrumentality, dude. That's like two
yeah.
$6 words already.
Yeah. We just gave them 8 things, man.
Yeah.
But
There's a few extra.
every one of them, you can do like a massive deep dive. Maybe when that new grok comes out or whatever, you can find out a little bit more, dip into the
Yep.
archives.
Yeah, so yeah, I think this is a great point for you to jump off, do your own research. Don't take our word for it. Go look into it some more and,
Yeah.
and get interested. My dad always used to say the best way to be interesting is to be interested, right?
Yeah.
And go and learn some of this stuff. And again, we really appreciate you watching every week. Couldn't do the show without your support. Go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon to support us. Go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow to download the Hallow app for free and participate in the 30-day Bible challenge with Jonathan Rumi. And if you want to go on this trip with us to Greece on this pilgrimage, very limited seats. Go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Greece. Ryan, it's always great talking with you. You're
Yeah.
looking good, man. You're looking better every day.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. Summer's ending. Kids are going to school. We got a studio we're going to be putting together sooner or later. So I'm excited about all this stuff coming up in the future.
Yeah, and we have a big announcement coming up soon, and then we're going to need everyone's help on. So can't wait to share that with you. Right.
All
So,
right. Well, thanks for
all right,
listening,
Ryan.
everybody. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next week.